Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed our conversation with Ira Shapiro, both the discussion of his terrific book and his discussion of some of these procedural historical perspectives on the Senate, how it works, and some days how it doesn't work or why it doesn't work. We certainly thank him for his time and recommend his book to everybody. We're going to continue now with our book theme for today. It's the holidays, and everybody's kind of looking for a good book, and football season will be over pretty soon. It'll be cold and gray, and nothing like curling up on a Sunday afternoon with a good book. So what we're trying to do is entice you to make that good book a political book and give you some choices that you can read, and again, just get a little more educated on process, politics, history, whatever excites you, but just to get you to take that next step and get interested in a topic that will want to get you to be more of an advocate or get involved in the system. You can always go to thirdparty101.com. I read books and then I write reviews of those books at thirdparty101.com. But today I just want to introduce a few books to you, and then, food for thought, as they say. So the first book I want to talk about, and again, there are reviews of all these books on thirdparty101.com, is a book called It's Even Worse Than It Looks, and it's by Thomas Mann and Norman Ornstein. It's Even Worse Than It Looks. And I love the subtitles that people sometimes give their books. This subtitle, I don't know if you can see it, is How the American Constitutional System Collided with the New Politics of Extremism. Of course, they always have to have their subtitles sound threatening or make you want to run out and buy the book, I guess. But of the books we're going to talk about today, this one book I think is a very good source to talk about why the system is dysfunctional, how it got there, and make some recommendations of how we can get out of this dysfunctional, polarized world we live in. So if you're looking for some background on the topic of dysfunction and polarization, this is a good book to start with. And it starts with a couple very timely, although it wasn't recently written, a couple timely topics like debt and other things. And it drills down enough to give you more of a background on how things got dysfunctional and maybe some tricks of how we can work our way out of this dysfunction. So that's book one. The next book we want to talk about is The Unwinding. So this is The Unwinding, and it's by George Packer. The Unwinding by George Packer. This is not only a very interesting book, I think it's a terrific book in the way it was written. Not all the books that I think are political books are particularly well written or compelling in the way they're written, but The Unwinding by George Packer, just so well written. And again, he has a subtitle, An Inner History of the New America, An Inner History of the New America. And what I liked about Mr. Packer's book is he has a very thorough series of vignettes that are brought from unique autobiographical perspectives. So he introduces you to real people, and he introduces you to how real people are impactful or impacted by the political system. And he tells their stories, and he winds 10, 20, 30 stories through a historical period, a recent historical period, and he paints a picture of America that I think is maybe more distressing than, I think, to me, I believe it's more distressing than it's actually happening, but it's definitely an awakening and written, again, in a very unique way. The next book I wanted to alert you to is a book by Joseph Stiglitz, who was a Nobel Prize winner, and his book is called The Price of Inequality. The Price of Inequality. Now, I actually am not a big fan of Mr. Stiglitz's book because I think it's slanted a little too more, let's say, to the liberal arguments related to inequality, financial inequality, impact inequality in America. But I'm pointing his book out to you as much as for the book as for the topic. This is a topic that I don't think is going to go away. We'll spend some time talking about it on the show. This notion of inequality through income in America and how that inequality in America through income and the top 1% and the 1% of the 1%, how it impacts the political system. So if this is an important issue for you, Mr. Stiglitz's book is a good place to start. But if you start there, I think you probably owe it to yourself to get some balance, as again, his book may tend more to the liberal side of the ledger, and you might want to balance that out with something on the conservative side. But I do highly recommend that income inequality is an issue that you've got to come to grips with. I don't think the political world is going to let it go away. It gets a lot of political play, and it's something that either will skew or allow you to skew your views, or allow you to at least better understand why the political system is dysfunctional and sources of polarization. Another book that I want to talk about, the last book for this segment, is called The Next America. It's by Paul Taylor, and he's with Pew Research Center. I've talked about this book on some other shows, and I apologize. I meant to bring the book in today, but I found that I lent it to a friend. So again, let me tell you, the title is The Next America. It's written by Paul Taylor, and he's with Pew Research Center. This is following another theme that we've introduced in our shows that it's important. I want you to maybe get some background and education on. It's the demographics. It's the demographics that underlie our country, who our country's made of, who lives in our country, and the politics that derives from these demographics. We've talked about that some already, and we're going to drill down, as I say, in some future shows and talk about the millennials. The millennials is a very intriguing generation. You're going to hear more and more about them. They're maturing now. It's the 18 to 30-year-old cohort in our population. So I suggest you could look at Mr. Taylor's book or find another book on demographics, on millennials, and try to start to understand how the impact of demographics overlays to politics, and then how that overlays to dysfunction and polarization. And finally, again, we're recommending Mr. Shapiro's book, The Last Great Senate.